Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in for today's video interview. Tony Restell here from Social Hire, and delighted today to be joined by Catherine Bell, who, as you can see, is an author and is going to be talking to us about leadership and awakening leadership within companies and individuals. So Catherine, thanks for joining us today. Would you like to start by telling people a little about yourself and your company?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Tony. It's an honor and privilege to be with you. So our organization awakens the fire within, and we help organizations to really ignite their potential and what they're here to do and to serve. I'm also a best-selling and award-winning author of a book called The Awakened Company, which we demonstrated right at the beginning. As well, I have founded an organization called the Awaken Project, which helps with microcredit for female entrepreneurs. And I sit on something called the Center for the Purpose of the Corporation, working with thought leaders across Canada on providing thought leadership on what is purpose.
Terrific. Well, listen, let's dive straight in. Why would you say that the awakening of leadership is important? Why should people be concerned about that?
Well, really, Tony, let's look at the state of our world. The majority of people are disengaged. So with the Awakened Company model, we look at awakened leadership. So that's awakening within, awakening our relationships, and awakening organizations, and awakening our community and society. And why is that so important? Number one, I spoke at the individual level, how most people are disengaged at work. Number two, people rate the worst time of their day as their time with their bosses. So we've got to get out of this boss hole challenge that we have. Number three, the majority of businesses don't survive past 9 years. So we need to create a different way of being and doing for everybody.
Absolutely. And so what would be some of the ways that you would go about doing that? Are there some steps you would follow? How someone wants to do this, how would they go about doing that?
Yes. So we spoke about the awakening ripple there, ourselves, relationships, organizations, communities, and let's focus in on ourselves. So listeners, what can we actually do to help awaken a better world for everybody? So the first thing I would say is to become self-aware, and what the research points to. So the Awakened Company marries wisdom traditions with practical know-how and business research. So the business research points us in this direction, is how do we become more self-aware as leaders? So number one, I would say, is to develop a sense of who we are, what our strengths are, what our work-ons are. I've interviewed thousands of CEOs for senior leadership positions. And you know, when somebody doesn't know what their work-ons are, it was an immediately they're not going to make it to the next level. So like, here is the invitation for us all, is how do we become more self-aware? Number two, and I also believe in something called the Enneagram, which I think every leader should know about, because it really is a roadmap for how do we become more present. Number two is mindfulness. And Tony, you know, what is mindfulness? It's bringing us back to the moment, bringing us back to the moment, bringing us back to the moment. And what has been found, and research points us again, is how do we bring ourselves back to the moment? It's actually in our breath. So Tony, let's just put our hands on our bellies. And instead of most leaders, we're in a state of anxiety. So we're breathing from the top part of our lungs. Put our hands on our bellies, close our eyes, and just do one big belly breath. So inhale and exhale. And just in that one breath, it brings us back to center. So for every leader to cultivate their self-awareness by being centered, by being in our bodies, by having the full experience of our bodies. And number three is for us to become aware of our awake asleep line. Am I behaving from my highest self, or am I behaving from my more habitual negative self? So that's the invitation that that I and we would have for leaders in terms of how to at least begin the process is that the work begins at home. The work begins with us to create a more engaged world. We show up as engaged and awakening as possible. So that's the invitation for every leader who's listening to this.
And I know when we first spoke, you were talking about the difference between awakened leadership, asleep leadership. Can you just expand on that a little bit for everyone?
Absolutely. So again, back to business research, the transformational leadership model, every leader should know. And it's a model that's been thoroughly researched. So here it is. And leadership can be taught. Leadership can be taught. Often people don't think leadership can be taught. That often it's some kind of charismatic thing. No, that's absolutely not true. Everybody can be a leader and can be an awakening leader. So here's the invitation. So those asleep leaders, it's kind of the laissez-faire, contingent reward. You do something good, I'll give you a little treat, or laissez-faire is not paying any attention. But what the transformational leader does is they focus on 4 I's, and those are individualized consideration, that is treating people as individuals, that we're not a group, that we are individuals. Number 2 is intellectual stimulation, and that is, are we engaging people intellectually by asking them questions, by getting them to think for themselves? Number 3 is idealized influence, and that is, are we living our values? Are we behaving from a values-based place? And number 4 is inspirational motivation, and that's the sense of we have a desired end goal and a desired end game, and we kind of encapsulate and enroll people in creating that vision of the future for not only the organization, for themselves as well. So the transformational leadership model, when we begin to think of the 4 I's, they have nothing to do with the individual leader. Rather, Tony, they have to do with elevating people who they're working with. So how can every interaction we have as leaders help to elevate the people we're around, the environment we're around, and ourselves? So again, awakening ourselves, awakening our relationships, awakening our organizations, awakening our community, so that there is a better way of working and contributing to society for all. And that actually will provide you with better financial returns. So that's the invitation for everybody listening to us today.
Fantastic. Catherine, some really interesting insights today. For people watching, if they'd like to find out more, is there a website you'd like to point them to, or any contact details you'd like to share?
Yes, so please go to awakenedcompany.com, and as well you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So please come and join us and play with us and pick up a copy of The Awakened Company. It was written a number of years ago, and it still holds true today. Normally, business books don't survive past 6 months, so this is something that every business leader should read and consider.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for your time, and have a great rest of the week, everyone.